We're good to go. All right. This is for Molly or for me?
For you. Here we go.
So guys, thanks very much for being here on this second day of the new year. And for helping us kick off 2017 for the CCTS and the CCTS Forum on Wednesday evenings. You know, one of the things that we're trying very hard to do within the CCTS is to bring the community together, the various aspects. We're a very big enterprise here at UHB, stretching from the School of Engineering through the School of Medicine and touching many other entities in between. And so one of our goals is to bring groups together to think about how to do things, perhaps think about things a little differently. Yes. Think about ways of moving them along the translational spectrum to application. Sometimes we talk about discovery to delivery, but however you like to phrase it, it's our pleasure this evening to have Molly Wasko. I was just making sure my IPAs survived that cold. First. Molly, as you know, is professor in Collat School of Business, where she's chair of the Department of Management, Information Systems, and Qualitative Methods. Quantitative and qualitative. Anyway, Molly's been working with us on something called iCorp, an initiative that originally came from the NSF, that NIH finally recognized the value of and is now helping to promote. Molly is the champion for iCorp here at UAB and has been working with partners across our partner network. I think you've been down at Auburn. You've at least had discussions with folks in Louisiana and folks in Tuscaloosa as well. So Molly, it's our pleasure to have you here this evening, and I'm going to give the microphone to you.
So thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. And actually, I just moved positions January 1st, so I am an associate dean in the Collat School of Business, where innovation and entrepreneurial activity will be part of the bucket that I have in my wheelhouse. And so, as Bob mentioned, I've been working with a program called iCorp for about 2 or 3 years now. And what's interesting, this actually came out of a suggestion that Bob had in one of our CCTS meetings. He said, something's going on at Stanford and involves something called e-teams. Maybe we should be paying attention to this. So we got involved pretty early on and put up a program called Eye to Eye, Invention to Innovation. For those of you that remember, we gave a presentation on that a couple of years ago, where we actually tried out initially this iCorp model to see if it would help us translate ideas that we had on campus into commercializable ventures into the community. So we've been working with this model for a while, and as Bob mentioned, NIH is actually really starting to pay attention to it. So the agenda for tonight, this is going to be more of a workshop. I'm going to ask you guys to actually get involved and do some work. I want you guys to contribute your insights and ideas as well. But basically, what we're going to talk about is why you should even care about bioinnovation and iCorp. Why is it even relevant to you? How does iCorp support translational science? How does it actually work? And then what are the opportunities that are available to you guys? So as Bob mentioned, iCorp was originally came out of NSF, and it was trying to help us kind of get at a different type of question. So with the CTSA, a lot of the investment so far has been in making sure that we are doing science right. So do we have the right biostatistics? Do we have people with the right training? Can we accelerate what we're doing? Do we have the right administrative systems? Do we have the right information technology systems in place? So really it was getting at this question of, are we doing science right? But with iCorp, it flips the question completely. It's, are we doing the right science in the first place? So it's bringing in a slightly different perspective. And so started with NSF, And the goal is really to train funded researchers how to evaluate their scientific discoveries for commercial potential. So one of the things that NSF had to answer to is how can we increase the economic impact of the research dollars invested every single year? And this is a really heavy lift. How do you even quantify the value of the research that we do? But even though it's a heavy lift, we have to be able to try and do that. And so NSF in 2011 started pioneering this iCorp to help researchers understand, is there commercial potential in the research that I'm doing? And of course, if you look at the funding for NSF versus the funding for NIH, it's simple to see why NIH is now paying attention, because significantly larger sums of research funding is coming from NIH. And when they're asked, well, what's been the economic impact of this investment in research, we have to be able to respond to that. So why did NIH pick iCorp? Basically, it's because NSF has proven that it works, and it works pretty well. So far, the iCorp network, it's called the National Innovation Network. It has universities as sites, and then it has regional nodes, and then it has a national program. So far, they've trained 800 teams across 192 universities in 44 different states. As a result of this, 320 companies have been formed and over $83 million have been raised in additional follow-on funding. So 6 new agencies are now adopting this, including NIH, and I was lucky to be part of a pilot program this last year where we got to follow teams, NIH teams, through the NSF iCorp program to see how it worked and see, what's the there. So what I discovered with iCorp and how it worked with these SBIR and NIH teams is that it really requires a fundamental shift in thinking. The number one fallacy that we all have, and I agree, we're even part of this problem in the business school, is this idea that if you build it, they will come. That it's all about the problem that we're trying to solve. And so, but what we've discovered is scientists work on problems that are really important to them or really important to other scientists, but we rarely ask, are we working on the problems that are important to the community? So when you think about our research and the problems we're trying to solve, typically we're trying to solve something for somebody else. So the right solution isn't when we've designed something we love. It's when we've designed something that our user loves. And in order to be able to do that, we actually have to go talk to users. Who are our customers for the, who has the problem that we're trying to solve? So what we've discovered is that we're really creating solutions to problems that nobody really cares about. And notice the word care. That this is about what customers or users value, what they want, what their pains, what their desires are. And so key to solving really important problems comes from understanding what people actually care about. And so I just told you that this was incredibly, it's adopted because it's been proven to be successful. But I just want to highlight, out of 800 teams, less than half of them have actually moved on to be a commercializable venture. And I will also offer to you that of these 800 teams with NIH, these are already companies. These are SBIRs. And they're now discovering whether or not they're working on problems that customers actually want. And so we have a lot of opportunity here to make sure that we're doing research, the right research that's relevant. So how do we go from getting scientists who are very comfortable spending all day in a lab looking inwards to think differently? And so really the fundamental core of iCorp is getting out of the building. So when you go through the iCorp program, we are going to keep telling you over and over, get out of the building. You cannot discover what users want by looking inwards. You have to actually go talk to people. So the idea behind iCorp is you have a guess. You guess that somebody cares about what you're doing because of some reason. So what we try and do, that's a hypothesis. The only way to collect the data to test that hypothesis is to go talk to people. You can't Google it. You can't find it in abstracts of publications. You can't get it by talking to the people in your lab. You actually have to get out and talk to the users that you're designing for. So at the core of iCorp, it's something called customer discovery. So iCorp, it's built around teams, that you will have some type of entrepreneurial lead, you'll have a discovery scientist or a technical lead, and you'll have an industry mentor. So what we've discovered, lone entrepreneurs by themselves typically are not successful. And a lot of our discovery scientists don't want to be entrepreneurs. It takes this team of people, someone with a passion to actually, get this type of work done, somebody with technical expertise, and somebody from the industry that can help introduce them to the people they need to talk to. This is the key to success. The programs are typically 4 to 7 weeks. There's a face-to-face 2-day kickoff. We have webinars in between. So you can do it electronically, and then the finale is also face-to-face. What the homework is during the week is interviews. Each team is required at a minimum to go talk to 10 users. So each week you will have a guess or hypothesis. You will have to go talk to people to collect data, and then the following week you report back, here's what I've learned. And so the whole core of this is you're not sitting in a lecture hall where we lecture to you. It's actually flipped. The teaching team is in the back, and the teams spend all of the time that we spend face-to-face talking about what they've learned. And this is a pretty rigorous process. If your team has not done their interviews, your team is asked to sit down. And it's because you haven't learned anything new to share with everybody else in the class. And so this idea, the only way you can test your guesses about what's important is to go collect data and learn something new. And so one of the key components of this is you don't have instructors or lecturers, that your teaching team is actually coaches. And at the end of this process, what we are looking for is, have you learned how to apply the process? We are not picking winners. At the end of this, we're not saying, yes, you're going to get funded, no, you're not going to get funded. It's, yes, your team gets it. They understand the process and can apply it over and over, even to different problems. So how well can you learn the process? All right, so here are some of the things that we heard pretty consistently when we were working with the SBIR teams. I don't need to know what customers want. All I need is some 3-letter agency approval. All I've got to do is get to FDA approval, then it's going to be this huge commercial success. Well, that is a really big fallacy. You can get to FDA approval, but then talk about the disappointment if you have created something that nobody wants. Remember, everybody has solved this problem already. There is a status quo. And so people have to be in enough pain or want enough gain to change what they're currently doing. And so even if you have FDA approval, that doesn't mean it's going to be a commercial success. What you want to know first, is this going to be a commercial success before you go through the pain of the FDA approval process? All right, it's way too complicated how they talk about it. So scientists love talking about their ideas like it's an abstract that they're submitting for a publication. You have to be able to explain it to a layperson. You have to say, who cares? Why do they care? And then we have such a hard time actually speaking in those terms as scientists because we've been taught and we're very good at convincing other researchers that what we're doing is important and they understand our language. But most people don't. Your users aren't going to be able to pick up and read an abstract. You have to be able to talk to them in language that they get. Another thing we heard, well, the people we interviewed 20 people today, and they loved it. Well, why did they love it? So if you come back with an answer like that, that means you went into an interview trying to sell your product, as opposed to listening to what the customer pains are, how the big wins are, what if they could do something differently, what do they wish they had instead. So always trying to get off of your product and its features, and then really understand the customer by asking, well, if you think this is so great, why? What does this afford you that you weren't able to do before? Why is that important? And then this is the dark side, that I didn't become a scientist so I would have to worry about how my science gets to the community. I don't want to start a business. This is not my thing. Well, that could be very true. The goal of iCorp is not to turn you into business people. The goal of iCorp is to get you to think about the problems we solve with our science to make sure it's relevant to the community. Once again, we're not trying to pick winners in this and find the winning commercializable ideas. It's how do we get our scientists to really tackle problems that have relevance in the community? Because if the stuff you're working on isn't relevant to some stakeholder group, then it's not going to translate out into the community. So don't we want to make sure that we're spending our time and our resources and our professions actually solving important problems that people care about? And then it's really hard to get interviews. Yes, it is. It really is hard to get interviews. But when you think about it, so we're asking for 10 interviews a week. How many customers will you need to buy your product in order to have a viable business, in order to have a viable solution? Is it going to be more than 10 a week? You're going to have to get used to talking to customers. And if this is such a great idea, by the end of this, if you have 70 or 100 people you've already made connections to that love your idea, you've already built your customer base. So yes, it's really hard, but guess what? It's really hard if you're trying to actually sell it too. So let's make sure that we go ahead and build out and start talking to people. All right, so how does iCorp work? Customers come first. The idea is you observe customers, talk to people, and then you create value that's relevant to them. And if you look on the slide, value, I've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Values are things that people need to satisfy, certain requirements. And actually, the lower you are in this hierarchy, the more likely people are really going to need what you have or need what you offer. So it's not talking about features. We're faster, we're better, we're cheaper. What are those things? What do those things afford your customer that they actually really value? All right, so all of our research scientists are experts in the technology. We're not interested in the technology in this program. What you now need to do is become an expert in the customer. And so with this, we actually tell the teams to take your technology, stick it in a box, and lock the box. So we get a lot of pushback. Well, I can't share the details about my technology because I don't have the right patent or I need an NDA. Not a worry. Actually, we don't want you talking about the technology at all. We want you to become an expert in the customer. So put it in a box and lock it. This is incredibly hard for research scientists to do. All they want to do is talk about their technology. So what we're trying to do is get them to put it in a box. All right, so the number one myth, customers want your technology. They don't care about your technology. That's why you can put it in a box and put it away, and it doesn't matter for this program. Customers want to get their jobs done. They want their problems addressed. They want their pain killed, and they want their dreams achieved. So what you're trying to get at is understanding what the customer wants and values. All right. So the first step in this is to actually develop a business thesis. So the first step in iCorp is to actually come up with this answer, a simple sentence. Who is your customer? What is your product? Why will they buy it? So who is your customer and why do they care? All right, let's see if you can do this. So I have this awesome product. It's going to just fly off the shelves because everybody needs it. It's called Autopilot. All you have to do is plug this into your car's outlet, and it turns into a self-driving car, an automated vehicle. So let's see if you guys take 5 minutes, and you can work with the people around you. Who is your customer? What is the product? Why will they buy it? Talk? Scribble?
Okay.
You have to participate. You have to participate. You did. We're going to need to take the mic around because I'm going to make them. Good way. So, really good insight from this group. There are lots of different customer segments, and they have very different needs. Moms with children, truck drivers, people with disabilities that can't get around. And so when you talk about who is your customer, be specific, because you're developing something for a specific customer segment, and you can't say, well, all people want my autopilot because it's cool. So be real. What are the values that that specific customer segment will get out of having this type of device?
So would they have different business theses for different customers then?
Yes. So, and basically what you guys will, get to is each business thesis is your guess, is your hypothesis. You are just guessing at this. You have no idea if it's true until you actually go and talk to those people. So this is why identifying the customer segment, if it's moms, you know who you need to go talk to test that hypothesis. That doesn't mean it's not relevant to other customer segments, but you have to pick a place to start.
So it seems like there's one bit of information that's missing, which is how much does it cost? Because that will determine to a certain extent your customer basis.
So cost is a feature. It is not something that people value. So notice up here, my product, something, anything. Moms will buy anything to get their kids to soccer practice. So if you can actually substitute your product with the word anything, then what you do with pricing is it's part of what we go through with iCorp. If it's based on values, then how much value does it bring to somebody?
That's too carpal too. I said that's carpal too.
Parents.
And it's depending on who actually your audience is, actually, because poor people wouldn't do anything to get their child a soccer practice if you're poor.
So, which is a very good point. There could be some segments that wouldn't care about your product at all. That's important to know. So you can't just have people, patients. You have to be able to define this. All right, so what did you guys come up with? I want to hear your business theses. All right, 2 more minutes now that you've had some coaching.
Also, when we go to answer, so everybody can hear online if we're recording, just let me get some answers.
Long commuters. Who can do work instead of.
So people with long commutes want autopilot because
They can have me time, whatever that is, work or reading a book or doing something without distraction.
it provides them with time, more time in their day. And you don't even have to define it. So you have a guess that that's true. Now you would go talk to commuters. So, and what would they do with that time if they had it available?
Drunk drivers.
Actually, for bar owners,
Yeah. They're required.
All right, so turn it into a business thesis.
yeah,
Adults that go out want autopilot to have a safe way to get home.
Cheaper than Uber, and you don't have to leave your car someplace.
It comes with every third martini.
Or your car now becomes your happy hour place.
A self-driving car, what could possibly go wrong?
So take the technology, stick it in the box, and for now, what do people value? So if it is safety, then you know how to develop that product. If it's accuracy, you know how to develop that product. Is it timing? So understanding what your customer values about it. So parents that want a way to get their kids to soccer practice, there's a safety component in that. You want to know the kid is in the car and the kid gets out of the car and is safely delivered somewhere. So do you see how this works and why it's important to start with the customer? All right, so autopilot is really, really easy. There could be hundreds of different customer segments and hundreds of different values, but you know what? You can actually pretty easily identify the customers. But what about innovations in biosciences? Who's the customer for a medical device? Who cares?
The surgeon.
All right, so
provider.
does the surgeon really care? So the surgeon's already solving this problem. So why would they value your new solution?
Less time in surgery.
Do you want me to? That is a really good guess. So what matters to the surgeon is time. So you would go talk to surgeons and see if that's true. What you would discover is probably, no, they don't. They care about safety or quality or ease of use. So something, this is why you test your assumptions. All right, but what if the surgeon isn't the one who makes purchasing decisions? What if you're part of a health system and you don't get to pick because you're part of a team of surgeons? Then who's your customer and what do they value? They could value faster or cheaper or better, so you'll have different customer segments, but they're different types of stakeholders. What if you have a saboteur? So what if you have a very influential chief surgical scientist that doesn't want this? What if you can't get reimbursed for it? Or the reimbursement now is so inexpensive that they're not going to adopt a new system. So lots of interesting issues with bioinnovations that that NSF doesn't really face with regular, products and services that are consumer-based. And so this is why working through an iCor is really helpful, because it gets you to think about this in a team environment and listen to the other experiences of the other teams. So one of our NIH teams was working on a virus, and a virus that doesn't impact people in the United States. They had to talk to surgeons in third world countries. How do you do that? They have this great solution. They were convinced. Actually, they had an SBIR. They had a company around it. But when they talked to the medical professionals in that environment, they're like, I don't care if we cut the days, down from 3 days to 1 day. That's not my problem, because either way, I, solve it with the same drug. So they just give the drug immediately, and it, actually fixes a range of things. So they didn't need a faster diagnostic. So it was really interesting for them to realize, well, what is your problem? And that way you can pivot to work on things that people really do feel is necessary in the field.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
It seems that they needed to get funding in order to go and actually access their targets and get the information of what was really important. So they needed to get funding based on something that actually wasn't important in order to go find out what was important. So it's a problem with funding again in order to find out about your targets.
This is where the iCor program actually makes a really big difference. That if you make it to the SBIR or the NSF National Program, you get $50,000 in funding to go do customer discovery. What this team did is they did take a trip to go talk to people in the field, but they made a lot of connections and did most of the follow-ups via Skype. And they recorded the Skype interviews. And so it was very powerful for them to be able, but you're right, how do you know what people need unless you actually put yourself in the context? And so iCor programs come with funding to be able to do this type of activity to really discover what your customers need. Good question. Other questions? Any other business theses? All right, this is the start. You have a starting guess. So from here, what you do is you get out of the building, go talk to that customer segment, and figure out, is this really your problem? But you have to do that without describing your technology. So get to know that, what are your problems with this? What if you could do something differently? What do you wish you had? What do you like about what you're currently doing? And so part of the skill set that you learn is how to actually go talk to people. This is why the team is really important as well, because a lot of our discovery scientists just don't want to do this. It's hard. It's really hard. But it's only hard until you practice at it. And once again, understanding what the community needs are just helps us drive better science, because we'll be solving more relevant problems. All right, so here are the different iCor opportunities. So NSF has this National Innovation Network. It starts with universities designated as iCor sites. So UAB is, we're pending for NSF. It's been recommended for funding. We're still trying to go through the process. So we're actually going to be an iCor site. With that carries funding for the teams that go through the iCor program. So the way we've set it up, it's set up as a 4-credit class that undergraduate and graduate students can take. Teams can be formed. Not everybody on the team has to be registered for the class, but then each team that goes through will have $2,500 to actually engage in customer discovery. We can fund them. So once again, discovery scientists, if you have folks in your labs that you think might benefit from going through this type of process, then we'll have a mechanism starting in the fall to be able to do this. All right, from there's an organization called iCor Nodes. We are actually part of the iCor South Node Network. So we've partnered with Georgia Tech, with Alabama, and with Tennessee, and we provide regional training. So if we have teams that we want to send forward for additional training, we can actually send them to one of these regional trainings. They happen 4 times a year, and they're at different locations. So we just finished one up at Georgia Tech. The next one's going to be up in Huntsville. Then UAB is going to be hosting one in April. So you don't get funding to go through the program. It doesn't cost you anything. It's not for credit. It's great for people to get their feet wet. So what happens then, if you get recommended from a regional training program, we will send you to the national NSF program. Going through a regional program will get you NSF lineage to be able to apply to the national program and get that $50,000 worth of funding. What we're looking for in the regional programs is, are you willing to follow the process? We're not looking at, do you have, the best technology in the world? It's, are you following the process? Will you go through this process of customer discovery? Do you have more things that you can learn? And so that will get you into the NSF national program. Right now, NIH is taking their SBIRs and making this program available. They've tapped into the NSF network of teaching teams, and they've actually sponsored SBIR NIH specific cohorts to go through this. So the downside to that is you already have to have SBIR training. But anyway, there's two pathways to be able to get into this National Innovation Network and get funding to be able to do this. All right, so what we're doing with the CCTS and other CTSAs is we're trying to build a national innovation network specifically for NIH. So as I mentioned before, we need some tweaks to the iCorp program because the way we talk about customer segments is very, very different because we have patients, we have administration, we have insurance, we have doctors. Some of the processes that you have to go through to get something requires approval. So what we're doing now is we're working on how do we tweak the iCorp curriculum to be more relevant to biosciences. And so the past year, a team of CTSAs participated in going to the SBIR cohort, and we've got a plan for how to actually build out the curriculum. So the pink stars, those are the CTSAs from NCATS. And you can see the overlap with the NSF sites and the NSF nodes. So it's a wide national network. But we're hoping to bring NIH iCorp to and provide regional training ourselves. All right, so back to why. The goal isn't to turn you into entrepreneurs. The goal is to make sure that we're getting the most out of our investments in science. I truly believe after seeing these SBIRs that the people who have actually engaged in the process are going to be better scientists because of it, because they understand how to actually connect to the community with the types of problems that they're solving. It helps you write more compelling grants. Anybody who's thinking about doing an SBIR, I highly recommend going through an iCorp program that you have about a 60% better chance of getting funded if you can talk in your SBIR grant about how you've talked to the people and you know it's relevant. It increases your chances of doing science that makes a difference, solving problems that are important to the community. So we were in a meeting the other day and it was really interesting. We have this great program and we're so shocked and stunned in awe, nobody wants it. And so when you talk to the community, they say they want this, but we want to give them this. How do we overcome this disconnect? Well, the approach is, well, we'll just convince the community they're wrong, as opposed to start with the community and build programs they want. If they want it, if they're in pain, they're going to come to us to help solve that problem. And then training the next generation of translational scientists. So I admit I'm part of the generation of scientists that believes if I build it, they will come. I know what the problems are. I experience them every day, so I'm just going to build the perfect solution. I just need $100,000 so I can build my prototype. Once I have my prototype, everybody's going to flock to it. They'll see how much value it is. But I need to build the prototype first. Well, can we get our scientists and train them a little bit differently before we send them out the door? That let's start with, well, why don't I test my assumption first that everybody will love it if I build it, and go talk to people. What do they really want me to build? Am I building the right thing? it's going to be much more likely to translate out. So I agree that a lot of us don't want to talk to people. This is not why we got into science. You know, being able to explain it to customers is somebody else's job. All I have to do is disclose the discovery. Somebody else can go sell it. But if we can train scientists to think a little bit differently about both. So once again, remember, what's the business thesis? 3 things. Who's your customer? What's the product? Why do they care? So your homework for tonight is the research you're working on now. Who is going to, who are you building for? What are you building? And why are they going to care about it? And then if you can come up with that simple business thesis, you can explain it to anybody at a dinner party. And also you can ask them. You can start getting feedback immediately. So my hope is that going forward, this is how we'll teach our research scientists to think. All right, can I have 5 more minutes? So this past fall, we decided to do a little customer discovery ourselves, take this out on the road, and see if we have any research scientists who are really interested in doing this. So we hosted a pop-up at Auburn University. Luckily, Tom Denny, one of our CTSA partners, was willing to do this and hosted a pop-up. A pop-up, by the way, it's a fancy word for a workshop. So it was lunch and a 3-hour workshop. So we put together a really good teaching team. We tried to include as many people from the partner network as possible, including bringing the director from Georgia Tech to give part of the workshop. And this was twofold. One was for all of us to be in the same room and meet each other, and then also for everybody in the room to learn from each other so we could go back to our own institutions and offer a pop-up. So watching everybody teach and learn. So one of the teams, actually the faculty, Alan David, went to the pop-up. He said, this is so cool. I have to do this. How do I get involved? So he said, this is great because we have a regional training program coming up at Georgia Tech. So he came with 2 of his doctoral students that he had working in the lab. And so they had this really good idea. I'm going to have to read it because this is what they submitted. Diagnostic and therapeutic agents, so-called theranostics for clinical use as an MRI contrast agent. So, of course, in their application, I don't understand any of this. It's a technology. Obviously, it's a technology. All right. So they came to the iCorp South Regional Program. Version 1.0. So day 1, what's your business thesis? Small, consistent size molecules are best. That's where they started, which is perfectly fine. So we said, get out of the building, go talk to people who run MRIs and see if this is true. So then they came back with 2. MRI centers want agents with high quality results. All right, that's a great version 2. But MRI centers are not customers, they're buildings. So we had to help keep refining this. Who is your customer? Who really cares? And then high quality results. Well, it turns out that what they're talking about, radiologists will buy imaging agents that are safer for patients. So what they discovered after 5 weeks of being in this program is they were solving the wrong problem, completely the wrong problem. Their thesis was radiologists, MRI centers, wanted higher quality. Actually, they didn't want higher quality. They wanted a solution that was safer. And so by spending the time in the lab working on quality, they weren't building something that would actually lead to, MRI centers actually purchasing it. So they were so effective at going through and learning the process. Their outcome was, oh, heck, we've got the wrong technology. But they now have an idea around a technology that they need to do customer discovery again. And so we actually recommended that they go to the national program. We're trying to work with them now to get them to the national program, get some funding. So even though initially they came out of NIH, that we can get them into NSF because of going through this regional network. So it's a really nice story of how well it can work. And you know what was great about this team, sometimes the faculty can be a hindrance. So we had a team at regionals where they didn't let any of other team members participate, or they were correcting them the entire time. So sometimes we have to coach the faculty. Yes, it's important to participate, but you get to sit back. You know, let them step up and do some of the work. So looking at the team dynamics is important too. So that's it for the workshop. Do you guys have questions? Are you so excited to get started?
Well, I'm wondering, is this a model for, is this where, so NIH is excited about this.
Yes, it is.
So is this, do you envision this approach to dominate the kind of science that NIH will fund?
So I believe, and this is me that has very peripheral connection to NIH, that they're going to take more seriously the sections of your grants that talk about impact and how you know. And I believe that I read it in an abstract or I Google searched it. For instance, one of our big fallbacks is Alabama has the worst health outcomes in the world. Therefore, it's important to do my research, you know, whether it's obesity or stroke or diabetes or just name it. So I can cite Google statistics saying that we're at the bottom. Therefore, fund me. But I think we're going to have to add, if we do this, that it will actually have an impact on the community we're trying to serve. So what makes you think anybody in a community will adopt your technology if you're successful at it? I also believe that if you're going to apply for an SBIR, they're probably going to make this mandatory.
I'm confused. I thought originally the teams were composed of people of different sorts, and I'm trying to assign to some. It seemed like at the end here, putting 3 people who are basically the same on a team. That doesn't strike me as nearly as powerful because you're going to have this probably similar strengths and similar weaknesses. Most research scientists would not be good interviewers. They don't like to talk to people. That's why they work at lab. So is this morphed, or did I misunderstand at the very first?
So they're different flavors. So for the CITES program and the regional program, we're not as sticky about how the teams are composed. And granted, the research scientists don't want to do this, but they're probably the ones that could benefit the most. So at least participating in the interviews. This is why going in with a partner is really, really helpful, because if you're shy, you can go with someone and you can watch the interaction and practice it before you have to go do it yourself. But still, it is incredibly informing to discovery scientists when they actually go talk to the users for whom they're creating a solution. This is why translational science is so important. Clinicians see these problems every single day. They know the problems in their community, but they don't necessarily have the time, the skills, the resources to solve some of these problems. How do you connect them to the people who can solve these problems? This is a huge disconnect because, you know, convincing us, the scientists, to work on somebody else's problem, you know, well, I've already got my own problems, that I don't need yours. But you guys have a great story about how this is really working here at UAB. Do you want to talk about the program? Brian, do we have a mic?
I'm Joel Berry from Biomedical Engineering, and in 2016 I collaborated with nursing in a way. So I am faculty in biomedical engineering. I'm also in the Honors College, so I teach undergraduates science and technology honors college students who are brilliant. These kids are off the charts. And so through collaborating with Nancy Wingo from the School of Nursing, we realized that our students, who are science and technology students, actually want to participate in the clinical enterprise because a lot of them are pre-meds. Simultaneous to that, especially in nursing, there is just cohort of nurses, nurse practitioners, professionals, also clinicians, doctors, who have tons of problems that just simply remain unsolved. So it just, this is a kind of a form of customer discovery where we ask the clinicians to give us their problems. And they were like, really? You want to know what my problem is? Sure, here's 50 of them. So we posted them on a website so that the students could go to the website and find problems that they're interested in solving just for their own interest and academic credit as well. What happened is that we had students solving clinical problems that were within the scope of sophomore or senior biomedical engineering students, chemistry, biology, physics, and they just were amazed at the fact that they themselves could actually contribute to the clinical enterprise and loved it. They got academic credit for it. Simultaneously, the clinicians were like, these kids are amazing. And so we're trying to move this into a more expanded state and get some funding to support further development of some of the ideas that came out of the ideation part of this. But we simply went to the clinic and asked people, what do you need? They told us a lot of things.
Can you tell us, can we have access to that website? To just look at what's there or not?
So the website is posted in our campus learning management system. And you can have access, but you can have access. But you have to, it's part of the learning management system where we have to put people in with their labor. Right. And so we want people to be in because they participate in Solution Studios. So we'd love to talk to you about ways that you might participate. We want people who will be clinical partners, who will be part of these teams, who will work with students, who will allow students to work with them to help solve the problems. But one of the questions that I was going to ask, Molly, is that the way that we're doing this is going out without a hypothesis. Really, we're sending students out without hypothesis. We're sending students out just based on, they see the problem and they think, wow, that would be interesting. And so we think that's been one of the keys to our success is that the students go in completely unfettered by all of these things. You know, they don't have any technology to put in a box. They're just open to what is your problem and I wonder how to solve it.
So they're starting, here's a problem that I know exists in our community. There could be hundreds of ways to solve this. My job now is to stay connected to the community and see which actually the community members find valuable. So once again, it's this idea, designing a solution that your user loves, not necessarily that you love. And so you're successful when somebody takes your technology, your baby, and says, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. But in order to get there, you have to understand what they need. It is so hard to sell something. It is so hard to spend years developing your diamond, send it out into the world, and people say, that's a piece of coal. I don't need coal. I don't want coal. Coal doesn't serve my purposes. That is horrible because then you have to try and convince them, oh, no, you do need this. You need this. It's faster, it's better, it's cheaper, it's blue, it's lightweight, it cuts down time in surgery. No, I don't need it. But starting with, oh my gosh, I have this huge problem. I am begging someone to help me solve it. Then you're going to have much greater adoption in the community.
I know we're talking about science, but I see so much application with beyond science. I just think about like our education system at UAB. How many times have we developed courses, degree programs, or certificates and we never really talk to students to find out what they want. Same thing you said. We know what's best for you, so we're going to develop this course for you. And then we get mad when the students don't sign up for the course. Like, well, did you actually talk to the students to find out what it is they want? So this iCorp model has just universal applicability. When you talk about community-based research, scientific research, or even higher education.
So it's a really good point, and it's really fundamentally altered my way of thinking. So as the department chair, I have lots of opportunities to put in new programs. Faculty come to me with their pets. Oh my gosh, if we just built this program, it would be highly successful. Well, I always push back, all right, go find me 20 students that say they would take this program. And then, we'll talk about actually going through the process, the 2-year process of actually getting this through. Oh, I'm too busy working on the curriculum. I don't have time to actually go talk to students. I already have this full-time job where I'm busy. But once again, changing this mindset, do you want to spend 2 years of your time without knowing for sure you're going to have an audience that wants what you're building? But yeah, Anthony, we do this all the time. Oh, I know if I just get it through the approval, I just need to get AIC to approve it. And then, of course, everybody will flock to it. But, getting us to eat our own dog food and adopt the things we teach in the classroom, that's another challenge. Area of opportunity. But no, we do this in lots of different ways of our work in academia.
I see this as something that we could probably integrate within the culture within UAB, so we can move to that type of place where no matter what it is that we're building things with the customer in mind as opposed to what it is that we.
Yep. That's what gets me up every day. Other questions?
So I'm pushing back a little bit because I have bought the Kool-Aid that there are companies that can anticipate what people want before they know what they want, and that those are the fantastic companies that really create the future. Now, maybe that's all hogwash and it doesn't really exist, but people talk like that does. So is that a myth, or is there, I can understand that for every one of those,
the iPhone.
There may be. Exactly. So for every one of those, there may be 5,000 that fail, and that you're improving the odds by going through this process. But is there a way in which this is stifling some kinds of creativity that we need to figure out less?
David, it's such a good point. The reason we buy Apple products is not because of the product. So the value that Apple creates is that it's the chicness of having the coolest thing. And if you actually look at mobile technologies and what phones are the most popular, Apple iPhone is only 10% of the install base of mobile phones. So it's only relevant to a small set and mostly American customers. And no, most people that buy this phone don't do it because they have any idea what the technology capabilities are. They do it because the value they're getting is I look cool. And, it actually integrates with some other stuff that I think is important. And so, however, Apple has launched lots of things that have failed because it hasn't been relevant to their community, and the community has quickly discovered this. So if you're Apple and the value you generate is this idea of innovation and product leadership, then really the product is secondary. Oh, by the way, I just happen to sell phones. Don't you want to buy one? So it's the value of having, and it's funny because my kids are very clear on this. They have Chromebooks, but I bought an Apple iPhone. Immediately the kids stole the stickers and stuck it on the front of their Chromebook so it looked like an Apple.
To follow up on that, and it's related to a question I asked earlier, it seems to me if you go to the target and go talk to the target, you're talking about the next step, because they're dealing with a problem right now and they need the next step. So if that's what's valued for what should be funded, there's no incentive for the risk, the paradigm shift kind of research that you cannot predict. That, you know, the iPhone, if someone came out and said, the whole world is going to want this, that might not get funded, and some other product might be the one that makes it or not. It would just take 10 more years to get the iPhone. So I guess what I'm saying is the quality of the target audience is important, but there are some kinds of science that can't answer to the target audience immediately. That is in fact very valuable, but at higher risk. And it seems to me to eliminate that high risk category is at a detriment to science in general.
So to reframe it a little bit, that there is an end goal in mind. All of us are in this room to improve human health. Regardless of where in the spectrum, we're examining that. So even if we're looking at something that happens that could be an assay, that could discover something important, that's really critical. So even though the current state is, well, it doesn't really matter because we use the same drug anyway, but we don't know. It's still important to get that discovery, because if we know we can tell the difference, maybe we can get to other drugs. So a good example of this is, who's the guy that has Tesla? I'm blanking.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. His challenge is to get man on Mars. So that's his goal, improve human health, get man on Mars. So he's investing a lot in technologies. He's never going to get to Mars, but he's going to have solar arrays that will help us. He's going to have autonomous vehicles. He's going to have rockets. So those are the technologies to try and get to this end in mind. So just if you start thinking of what's the end in mind, and that it's something that people really care about, and I can see a pathway, you know, it makes a big difference. So one of the examples that came out of NIH iCorp, and it actually broke my heart, this team had come up with this really great technology to help premature babies breathe better. You guys probably know more about this than me. So it's basically a CPAP machine that was much more comfortable for babies and allowed them to breathe better. So they raced to FDA approval, got it, you know, very, very quickly for use in adults because they had proved its efficacy in infants. And so they put it, you know, huge funding, put it out in the marketplace, massive, massive failure. But it's smaller than what's currently out there. It's cheaper, you know, it works 10 times better. But guess what? Do you know why people don't use the CPAP machines? It's because they don't want crap on their face. Period. And it was still stuff on their face. And so only the very, very sick who would take any solution actually complied with it. The people who were, you know, I'd rather go without sleeping versus put something on my face. If they had spent, and once again, we're not asking for huge investments of lifetime. So the SPION group, within 4 weeks, discovered that they were working on the wrong problem. So very quickly, you would just, if you talk to 100 CPAP users about, or non-users, you would discover the problem is I don't like stuff on my face. Not faster, better, cheaper.
I guess it's just talking about the difference between discovery science and translational science.
Right.
So.
But boy, if you can explain your discovery science to somebody in the next phase and why it could be relevant, that's your customer. So you're just changing it. Maybe it's not an end consumer, but it's someone who's going to pick up my idea and try and figure out how to get it to the next step. So it applies regardless of where you are in the stages.
Could I make a suggestion, Molly? First of all, we want to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for being such a great audience. Are we going to do the next forums with the entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
You want to comment on that?
Yep. So if this was exciting to you, hopefully you'll find the next thing exciting. So we've partnered with other CTSAs. There's 4 of us. And what we're going to be doing for the forums for February through May is actually have academic entrepreneurs come and present to us. So we will physically have one here in March. February, it will be via WebEx, and it will be hosted by Arkansas. But we have a series now of entrepreneurial academics and then stories about, how did they get where they are. So come, please, encourage any of your students, trainees to come. But hopefully people who see others who have done it will possibly see a pathways for themselves.